So thanks to all of you who were able to make it to this webinar here today. Sure, some of you were partying this weekend after the late Friday news. So we're going to get into a little bit on what the ruling was, but mostly we're going to focus on moving forward. So some initial thoughts that we had just over the weekend and some paths for moving forward. But I'd like it to be a little bit more conversational or open in terms of our webinars. So if you have any questions, especially at the end here, we're going to be spitballing on some opportunities or paths. So please let us know. So to get started, on Friday evening or Friday afternoon, after 4 o'clock Central Time, after 5 Eastern, initially the FCC postponed 1-to-1, but later the court struck down 1-to-1 and topical and logical specifically. That does not say that it could not come back in a different form. If it does, it would likely be about a year. So for at least the immediate term here, 1-to-1 and topological have been struck down. So that does mean that TCPA still exists, though. So that is, we've had a lot of, not a lot, but we've had several clients over that we can kind of forget that exists. So that is an important thing to remember. What we're talking about here today is how not to throw out the baby with the bathwater. So what positives, what things did we all learn and build with 1-to-1 that we can keep and leverage moving forward? So when you look at 1-to-1, obviously the first immediate one that comes to mind is as a differentiator, selling 1-to-1 consent leads as a premium product. So this could lead to increased revenue, but more importantly, even possibly things like partner relationships. If anything, we've learned that you have to have a closer relationship with your clients, your buyers. That would then yield higher lifetime values for customers. And then another is a diversified revenue stream. So rather than all of your leads or calls coming through one product, a diversified revenue stream helps to protect your business should some regulatory body decide to implement some other regulation in the future, which we all know is going to happen. With additional premium and regular lead products, you have the ability to manage your risk, not only through your multiple buyers, but also through those multiple revenue streams. And so placing less reliance on any one particular client or vertical in your business. And then, of course, the differentiation. So I would expect we're going to see a lot of companies revert to their previous or current way of doing things, not make any long-lasting changes. And so as a lead generation company, you can differentiate yourself from the masses by maintaining quality leads in a 1-to-1 consent environment. So what are some of the options for selling leads as a premium? So first and foremost, the 1-to-1 consent, just having that being a product in of itself. But what we've seen with some of our clients, and this is vertical specific, is that there is the expanded opportunity to do shared scenarios. So verticals that maybe previously have only been exclusive or your business has been exclusive. We have seen a lot of clients, and while they may take a small conversion hit, the overall revenue for a lead increase because of the consumers shopping or want to need for comparison. And so if you can display multiple consumers or multiple sellers, multiple companies to a consumer, I think we've seen that the consumer is going to engage with more than one. The next option is a competitive analysis. So when we look at your buyer base, you have more insight into which of those buyers, those companies, one, are performing because of the increase in the feedback loop and communication that went on over the past year to 18 months. But also knowing which of your buyers are successful or popular in the eyes of the consumer. And so that helps to devote your resources to those clients that are being selected and that are being chosen by the consumer. So it helps you align your resources to good buyers. It does help to understand the pricing across different markets. So when you're looking at launching a vertical, traditionally maybe launched with another lead gen company or an anchor buyer, and it's very difficult to know what those prices are going at. This helps you in a controlled environment get some of that market intelligence. And so the other is identifying gaps in your demand or service coverage. It's always a challenge, especially when buyers may dynamically bid or not on any given lead. Having the fallback options, submitting leads as standard versus ping post consent, or submitted for your lead gen brand because there's no matching buyers, those are more painful and because there's no reprocess or limited reprocess opportunities. And so that helps to really call out those gaps in demand that might otherwise go unnoticed. And so kind of along that lines, there's opportunities to do a brand building platform or directory model as an additional revenue stream for your business. So a lot of companies have launched a traditional directory where you're listing all of that information, on the site and giving in the consumer the ability to do that research. But the ping post consent API and form flow allows for a much more interactive and unique experience for the consumer. And then it also gives you the ability to monetize more of those actions that the consumer may take in a directory. So, for example, clicking to research a website or calling a phone number of those leads directly with the ping post consent API and HTML offer and some of those things, you can leverage and monetize those actions that the consumer may take through a directory or more of a brand platform. And then another is cross-marketing. Is that back related to topical and logical? It certainly makes sense. I remember when I had a lead company, we would always try to cross to a vertical that made sense for the consumer. With the one-to-one, you can have better control over the phone calls that consumer is going to make for each of those requests that they submit. You have less risk of reprocessing or your buyers selling that lead out the back door, so to speak, and bombarding that consumer with tons of phone calls. And because of that allows you then to present more offers or more opportunities to that individual lead. So obviously it's been pretty quick, or short amount of time since Friday. And I think that we'll be coming up with lots of other opportunities and ways to leverage one-to-one consent. But these are the ones that we came up with, at least initially here. When you look at selling one-to-one as a premium product, as several of our clients have already indicated they intend to do, right now everything has been done through one lead type because of how one-to-one rolled out from a regulatory standpoint and how our clients would have a mix, essentially. People transition. However, when you look at it as a separate product in of itself, the team just this morning were kicking around the idea, would it make more sense of having one-to-one consent as a separate lead type? And that does give you some freedom when you're talking about those scenarios where you don't have matches or you do have specific matches. Going from a one lead type to another would allow those to be set up, I think, a little bit more cleanly. There's less chance of of those leads being sold to the wrong partner. But most of the benefits probably are from a reporting standpoint, where those paths and those leads coming in different lead types then all have separate revenue associated with them, sources, etc. So those would be the pros. Cons are essentially the need to maintain possibly two different paths, or maybe looking at more of account level limits when you look at either quantity or budget based limits. So rather than controlling at individual filter sets, you might have to look more at account level. And then, of course, the need to run reports for two different lead types. That would be the negatives of going the different lead type. But when you look at keeping everything in the same lead type, we do have filter set labels and defaults that can be set up so that templates, for example, so that you can set up dynamic consent or one-to-one consent filters separately from standard, and have all those run through the same lead type. But then, you do have a little bit less of that assembly line process because you do have to build the filter set labels and the templates. So it's a little bit more set up on the client side. It's, of course, something that we can help and consult on along the way and do if you don't have the resources internally. But it does typically take a little bit more thought and setup so that you get that logic and the flow that you want.
Scott, we have some questions coming in on chat.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Do you want to take a pause and take some of these?
Yeah, could you put that across our Slack there? And
I put one of them on the channel that seems to be most active, but I'll read it out loud so the rest of the audience can hear as well if they're not looking at the chat. But TJ, if some of our buyers still want to buy one-to-one and others will take generic TCPA text, how could we differentiate on the ping reply?
so that is where you would convert your mode based off of that ping response. So when a lead, well, I guess there's really two ways that could go. If you have all of your buyers set up to accept only the ping post consent API and all of your standard to only accept the ping post lead API, then if you ping in with ping post consent and you get an unmatched response, you would have to submit with ping post lead. However, many clients, because if you have a buyer that does not require one-to-one consent, there's no reason not to return that buyer in the response because they are eligible for both ping post and ping post consent and ping post lead. And so if you are not getting a bid off of ping post consent, you can change the mode to ping post lead and submit it as full, in which case the system will follow presumably the best revenue scenario or the distribution logic of the lead type, and then sell it to either your best non-exclusive scenario or exclusive scenario, whatever that may be.
Yeah, we've got one more great question in the chat too from Vince, asking if he can keep all the one-to-one forms that are currently built out and use them similarly to how they were doing business before, basically getting permission for brands and their network of buyers.
That's a really good question. I'm trying to think of like how that would work. If your buyers require ping post consent, well, if they don't require ping post consent API, but they could take it. That's a good question. I don't know. I'm trying to think of how to do that off of the ping post. I mean, we have a dynamic consent form. So here we're going to change the language, and there's going to be no magic strings. I mean, it would work the same way in an exclusive match, right? The lead is, because there's only one company that the ping match to. You could have anything in the TCPA language and then post that lead in. It would then match to whatever the partner selected on the ping. The non-exclusive, the shared scenarios, it gets a little bit more complicated because in the ping post consent API, the consumer has to select multiple or some company. They have to take another action. So that one could be a little tricky that we'd have to talk through. But I think with the exclusive, it would work. In general, when you're looking at the Boberdoo forms, we have multiple outcomes, thank you pages, as driven by the outcome. So, the framework is in place as if we identify a fourth outcome that could be set up, for example, then we could easily add that here as another path. So again, going back to the TCPA consent, all of the possible scenarios are accounted for. I mean, I'm going to go off the cuff and spitball a little on a live webinar, but theoretically, right, pre-select and ping submit. We have the ping submit equals true that you can use with the forms. So there might be some configuration options that we could set in a form for a non-exclusive match to collect that non-specific language, but still match it to all the partners. But if you're looking at positioning this as a premium product, and with ping submit, for example, you could jump them to the last page, show all the non-exclusive matches with them being pre-selected. So at least then it would be minimizing the number of consumer clicks. So I think the verify works in an exclusive. I think, again, with the non, you'd have to get that pre-select in there. But yeah, maybe an override would be going back to the thank you page. Like another outcome of the thank you page box that we would be looking at adding for that fourth outcome. I believe for specific buyer language, the team is working on returning the language from a response in addition, so to replace the standard. Other, things to think about is we have been doing a lot of work for a lot of different clients. So if we are doing work for you, please consider whether or not you want that still worked on, or if we should put the brakes on that right away and update the ticket if it is the latter. Right. Looking at having partner settings override the default language as defined, here. So really looking at kind of following that same logic that we have for the redirect URL. Think of the home improvement use cases, where if the custom delivery response returns a redirect URL or iframe, we then include it and override any previous settings that you had. All right. Well, sounds good. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your Monday.